My name is Lauren Carter. I'm 31 years old. 4 years ago, I sent my parents money every month quietly without anyone knowing. Then one afternoon at a crowded family gathering, my dad suddenly shouted, "You only sent 60 cents." Everyone stared. He slammed his drink down. "Sienna sends $5,000 a month," I said quietly. "That was me." Mom snapped. "Stop stealing her credit." I stopped the payments. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, tell me where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe so you can follow the rest of my journey. I never set out to be the family's invisible ATM. At first, it was supposed to be temporary help with Mom's surgery bills, keep the mortgage afloat, while Dad's business hit a slow patch. Chloe, my sister, the so-called golden child, was between jobs, and I had just gotten a big promotion at the investment firm. It felt like the right thing to do. But over time, my parents rewrote the story in their minds. Chloe became the generous savior. I became invisible. Holiday cards, birthday speeches, Facebook tributes, they all went to her. And Chloe. She never corrected them. The moment Dad humiliated me over those 60 cents, something inside me shifted. I stopped the payments that day. I didn't say it out loud, but I knew this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about finally stepping out of the shadow they'd built around me. If you want to understand why that moment at the anniversary party hit so hard, you have to understand where I came from, how the air in our house always seemed to tilt in one direction, how 1,000 tiny choices added up to a message I learned by heart Chloe first. Lauren can manage. Our home in Dallas sat on a quiet cul-de-sac lined with live oaks that dropped leathery leaves year-round. Dad kept the lawn trimmed like a crew cut. Mom kept the garage immaculate even though half of it was taken over by her tailoring setup. 2 machines, a dress form, jars of buttons, fabric chalk like pastel dust. I remember the hum of the sewing machine in the evenings, the way it blended with the TV and the dishwasher and the cicadas outside. It felt safe. It felt like love. It also felt like ranking. Chloe arrived in a whirl of confetti and nicknames. Coco Sunshine, my little artist. She had strawberry blonde hair and laughter that made people turn their heads in grocery store aisles. I was Sweetie until I was old enough to carry the grocery bags. After that, I became helper, big girl, reliable. Those words sound generous, but they can also be a sentence. Reliable meant I didn't need cheering up. Responsible meant I didn't need help. The examples blur together like a flipbook. When Chloe wanted my toys, Mom would smile at me and say, "Sharing is caring, honey. Be the example." When Chloe knocked the head off my diorama the night before the 5th grade science fair, Dad sighed, "She's younger, Lauren. You should have put it somewhere safer." When we outgrew clothes, mine slid into Chloe's closet, as a matter of course. When Mom went shopping, new outfits appeared for Chloe because nothing fits quite right off the rack on that little frame, and I got a stack of hand-me-downs from cousins because college savings don't grow on trees. Birthdays told on us. On my 10th, I unwrapped a set of encyclopedias. "Useful. You're going to love these," Dad said, proud. Across the table, Chloe's upcoming gift, some coveted CD player she'd been hinting about, was already being discussed like weather. I remember nodding, memorizing the capitalization of grateful, promising myself not to cry over being given something that would undoubtedly help me. Later that night, I flipped open the E-volume and traced the gold leaf, telling myself this was the right kind of love. The day that lodged in my throat, though, was the piano recital. I was 13 and had practiced until my knuckles ached, scales running like ladders in my sleep. I taped the program date to the fridge and reminded everyone until I was a walking announcement. That morning, Chloe ran a low-fever 99-point-something popsicle in TV territory. Our neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, offered to sit with her for 2 hours. Mom pressed her lips together. "We can't leave your sister when she's sick." Dad folded his arms. Family comes first. I nodded because I always nodded. Then I played to an auditorium of strangers and accepted my gold certificate with a stage smile while scanning empty seats where my family should have been. When I got home, Chloe was sprawled on the couch, mouth blue from a grape popsicle, watching reruns, as if the world had not just knocked a hole through my ribcage. No one asked how it went. By high school, the lines were permanent marker. I kept a 4. Joined student government, volunteered Saturdays at the hospital. My accomplishments landed with soft thuds. That's what we expect from you, Lauren. Meanwhile, Chloe's B in algebra sparked a celebratory milkshake because math is hard, and a one-line part in the school play earned a family dinner out because look at her courage. I learned to carry pride inside my cheek like a secret lozenge that dissolves too slowly to enjoy. When the college letters came, the pattern held. I got into Northwestern and a couple of Ivies. Dad scanned the tuition grids and said, "Good. Now let's chase scholarships." A year later, Chloe was accepted to a state school and then transferred to NYU because fit matters. They took photos in Times Square and mailed me a postcard of the skyline with a lipstick kiss taped to the corner. My financial aid covered most of my bill, and I layered 3 part-time jobs over the rest cappuccino at dawn library stacks in the afternoon admin work on weekends, sleep in the margins. I told myself it was character. I told myself it made me tough. Some mornings it just made me tired. I don't want to paint my parents as villains. They worked hard. They did love us. They just loved us crooked. They mistook my competence for invulnerability and her charm for fragility. And when you grow up in that weather system, you internalize the forecast clear skies for Chloe. Lauren, pack an umbrella just in case. So I learned to be weatherproof. I learned to stop asking for rides for time for attention that made people sigh before they handed it over. I learned to claim the big feelings in private bathroom stalls, late buses, dim corners of the campus library, then wipe my face and get on with it. It's amazing how far you can go when no one is checking to see if you're limping. It's also how you end up in New York at 32 with a title and a view, still half convinced you only deserve the room if you don't take up any space. By the time I was 25, I had worked my way out of the shadows and into a life that looked untouchable from the outside. After graduation, I'd landed a junior analyst position at a Manhattan investment firm, a job where the elevators smelled faintly of leather briefcases and espresso, and the suits cost more than my first car. I kept my head down, learned fast, and became the kind of employee managers trusted to handle problems before they turned into headlines. The hours were brutal, 80 a week, sometimes more, but I didn't flinch. I was used to running on grit and caffeine. Promotions came quickly, junior analyst to senior analyst within 18 months, then associate, before my 3rd year. My salary grew from $75,000 to 120 plus bonuses, fat enough to make my younger self dizzy. I moved from a shoebox studio in Queens to a 1-bedroom in Manhattan with crown molding and a doorman who learned my coffee order. My relationship with my parents was cordial, in a way that felt like a polite handshake over an invisible chasm. We'd settled into a pattern monthly phone calls that skimmed the surface holiday visits that lasted exactly as long as politeness required. Chloe had also moved to New York by then, though in a different orbit entirely. We'd meet for lunch every so often, but it was always the same. She'd talk about gallery openings and rooftop parties, and I'd pick up the bill. She never asked about my work, and I never pointed out that her freelance fashion consulting seemed to involve a lot more brunch than clients. Then one afternoon, Mom called. Your father had to cut back his hours. She said, her voice as casual as if she were mentioning the weather. His blood pressure's been too high, the doctor insisted. I straightened in my chair. Is he okay? Well, he'll be fine, she said quickly. But then came the rest with the reduced income and Chloe needing help with rent again. Things are a bit tight right now. It was the first time I'd heard them admit to struggling. I knew supporting Chloe's education, 2 cross-country moves, and assorted career pivots had been expensive, but I'd assumed they were keeping it together. Now I pictured their mortgage statement credit card balances, the kind of quiet stress that settles in a person's shoulders until it changes their shape. How tight is tight? I asked. Are you behind on bills? A pause. Then, we had to use credit cards for some medical expenses last month, and the mortgage payment was late. "But we'll manage. You should save your money." I heard the words, but I also heard the unspoken part they wouldn't ask me directly. They never did, which meant it was on me to decide if I was going to step in. "I want to help," I said. "I'm doing well. I can send something each month." "Oh no, Lauren, I'm serious." The next day, I set up an automatic transfer for $2,000 a month. I labeled it simply Family Support and left the from field blank where my name could have gone. I didn't want gratitude that felt like a transaction. I didn't want them to suddenly treat me differently because of money. I just wanted them to breathe easier. 6 months later, after another promotion, I increased the transfer to $5,000. It was a big slice of my take-home pay 30%, but I could afford it, and the thought of them paying down debt or fixing the fridge without stress gave me a strange kind of peace. And then almost without noticing, the burden became part of my routine. Rent, utilities, 401k, $5,000 to my parents. I didn't ask how they spent it. I didn't want to. I told myself the anonymity was about humility, but it was also about avoiding the ache of realizing they might still see me as secondary, even as I was holding them up. That was the truth I didn't see coming. I had built a life where I could carry my family's weight without breaking stride, but the weight was still there. And every month I lifted it in silence. Looking back, there were signs the truth couldn't stay buried forever, but I didn't expect it to shatter in the middle of a celebration under the glare of 50 pairs of eyes. It was my parents' 35th wedding anniversary, and they'd been planning the party for nearly a year. Mom had color-coordinated tablecloths with floral centerpieces. Dad booked a live jazz trio. Chloe naturally was in charge of the creative touches. She'd been calling me for weeks about how our money, her words, was covering the catering and decorations. Every time she slipped and claimed ownership of funds I knew came from my account, I bit my tongue. The day arrived warm and golden, a perfect Dallas evening. I stepped into the venue in a fitted navy dress and low heels my armor for events like this. The chatter was thick with old family stories and polite gossip. I found my way through hugs from aunts who asked if I was still single and cousins who assumed I lived some glamorous Manhattan life filled with martinis and Broadway shows. When the formal program began, toasts were first. My uncle praised my parents' selfless devotion. Chloe gave a teary speech about the lessons they'd taught her and how proud she was to be able to give back to them every month. She never said the amount, but she didn't need to. The room was already full of nods and murmurs. My turn came, and I spoke about their grit, their work ethic, how I'd learned persistence from watching them. The applause was polite brief. Then came the gift opening. My own gift envelope had a $60 check, a symbolic number $60, for 60 combined years of marriage and life before it, because I'd planned to talk to them privately about a vacation fund later. Dad slit the envelope, pulled out the check, and frowned. "You only sent 60. His voice cut across the crowd. "Chloe sends us $5,000 every month." It felt like the air shifted a quick, hot tilt. People turned toward me, eyebrows raised. Somewhere near the back, someone whispered, "Wow." That was me, I heard myself say, low but clear. Mom's head jerked toward me. "Stop stealing her credit," she snapped, her tone sharper than the clink of the serving spoons. "Why do you always have to compete?" An uncle chuckled awkwardly, resting a hand on my shoulder. "No need to be jealous, Lauren. You've got your job, she's got her generosity." Chloe was nowhere in sight, already vanished, as if she'd known this moment might come. I kept my face still, but inside something gave way. 4 years. Over $200,000. Not one thank you, not one acknowledgement. And here I was, accused of envy, in front of a room full of people who would leave tonight thinking Chloe was the hero. I excused myself, walked straight out into the parking lot. The evening heat clung to me, heavy and unmoving. My phone buzzed. Jennifer, my old college roommate. "How's the family circus?" "They think I gave them $60 tonight while believing Chloe's been supporting them with my money for years," I typed. "I'm done." Her reply was instant. "So what now?" A strange calm settled over me, like the moment before a dive. "I'm stopping the payments. All of them. Standing between two parked cars, I opened my banking app, canceled the automatic transfer, watched the confirmation flash on my screen. 4 years of silence and sacrifice cut off in under 60 seconds. And for the first time in years, I could breathe. It took exactly 32 days for the fallout to find me. I was in my Manhattan apartment one Saturday morning, coffee in hand, the city still half asleep beyond my window, when my phone lit up with my parents' home number. I almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. "Hello, Lauren." Dad's voice was tight, deliberate. "How are you?" "I'm fine. How are you and Mom?" "We're concerned," he said after a pause. "There seems to be a problem with Chloe's monthly transfer. It didn't arrive on the 1st like usual, so they still thought it was her, even after everything." "That's strange," I said evenly. "Have you asked Chloe about it?" "Yes. She said it must be a bank error and she's looking into it, but it's been 2 weeks now. We have expenses we were counting on." I took a slow breath, letting the silence stretch. "Dad, those payments were never from Chloe. They've been from me. For 4 years. The pause on the line was so sharp I could hear the hum of my refrigerator. Then, "That's not funny, Lauren. Why would you say something like that about your sister? It's not a joke. I can prove it. Every transfer came from my personal account starting at $2,000 a month, then 5 after my promotion. I have all the receipts. This is ridiculous." He snapped the edge in his voice, familiar. "Are you really so jealous of her success that you'd make up stories?" His disbelief hit harder than I wanted it to. It was the exact reaction I'd been avoiding all those years I'd stayed quiet. But this time, I wasn't backing down. "Check your bank statements," I said. "Look at the account number. It ends in 4736. That's mine." I hung up before he could argue. Then I sat down at my laptop, pulled up my records, and emailed him 4 years' worth of bank statements, transfer confirmations, and a screenshot of the cancellation. Hours later, my phone rang again, but it was Mom this time. No greeting. Just, "How could you do this to your sister?" What she told us, everything. That you've been jealous for years, that you're trying to make her look bad now that she's finally successful. Did you even look at the documents I sent? Documents can be faked. We know Chloe. She'd never lie to us. The laugh that rose in my throat wasn't amusement. It was disbelief twisted with exhaustion. "Mom, call the bank. Ask them yourself." "We don't need to drag strangers into family matters," she said stiffly. "Chloe explained you were routing the money through your account for tax purposes. That's not how taxes work, and I'd lose my license if I did something like that." Her voice hardened. "She said you agreed to help her, that you were finally being a supportive sister." I ended the call without saying goodbye. That night, I barely slept. Not from guilt, those days were long gone, but from the raw ache of realizing the truth had no place to land in a house built on favoritism. 3 days later, my phone rang again. "Dad." This time, his voice was quieter. "We called the bank. They confirmed it's your account." I didn't speak. "We talked to Chloe. She admitted she's been unemployed for 8 months. The fashion work never happened. It wasn't victory. I felt it was something heavier. I'm not resuming the payments," I said. "Not until we have an honest conversation. All of us. Face to face." He didn't argue. "Can you come to Dallas next weekend?" And just like that, the meeting was set, the one I'd been avoiding my whole life. I flew into Dallas on a Friday evening carrying only a small suitcase and a stomach full of unease. This time, I didn't book a hotel. I stayed at my parents' house, figuring if we were going to rip open decades of old wounds, we might as well do it without retreating to neutral ground. The atmosphere was brittle from the moment I walked in. Mom was in the kitchen, moving briskly from counter to stove without making much eye contact. Dad emerged from his study long enough to say hello before disappearing again. Chloe arrived late enough to make it clear she'd rather be anywhere else. Her eyes were red mascara smudged at the corners. Dinner was awkward. The clink of silverware was louder than the conversation. Every question was small talk, the weather, traffic, the neighbor's new fence. Not one word about why we were there. After the plates were cleared, I set my napkin down and said, We need to talk. All of us. Dad nodded. Living room, 5 minutes. We took our places like chess pieces. Mom and Dad on the sofa, Chloe perched on the edge of the ottoman, me in the armchair opposite. The air felt thick like before a storm. I think we should start with the immediate issue, I said. Chloe's been taking credit for money I've been sending for 4 years. I want to understand why. Chloe's gaze stayed fixed on her clasped hands. I didn't plan it, she said quietly. When the first transfer came, they assumed it was me. I'd mentioned wanting to help someday, and they were so proud. For once, they looked at me the way they've always looked at you. What do you mean, I asked. With respect, admiration, like I mattered. Her voice cracked. I thought I'd tell them the truth, but then the next month came. And the next. And I started to believe maybe if I pretended long enough, it would become true. I let the words settle. The thing is, Chloe, they've always looked at you like you mattered. You just didn't see it. That's not how it felt, she said, tears spilling now. I've spent my life being the fun one, the baby, but never enough on my own. Meanwhile, you're the smart, successful one. You're everything they brag about. I turned to my parents. Do you hear this? She feels inadequate. And I've spent my life feeling invisible. That's not an accident. That's the roles you gave us. Mom started to shake her head, but Dad put a hand on her arm. Let her talk. So I did. I told them about the piano recital they missed, the birthdays that felt like chores, the graduations where Chloe's future eclipsed my present. I told them how I learned to be self-sufficient, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. When I finished, the room was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. You're right, Dad said finally. We failed you. Not because we didn't love you, but because we took you for granted. We thought you didn't need us. Mom's voice trembled. We were wrong. We made you feel unloved, and we made Chloe feel like she couldn't stand on her own. We thought we were doing our best. I nodded. Here's what's going to happen. I'm not resuming monthly payments. I'll help you set up a budget, and for true emergencies, I'll be there. But this, I gestured, between all of us has to change. No one argued. For the first time, it felt like we were all looking at the same weather. 2 years is a long time when you finally stop living in a cycle you didn't choose. I still live in Manhattan, but my apartment feels different now. Lighter, warmer, like the air has more space in it. I've taken vacations without guilt, learned to spend money on things that feed my life instead of patching up someone else's. I even picked up pottery, something I'd always said I'd try someday when I had the time. Turns out, when you're not bleeding yourself dry for approval, someday arrives a lot sooner. My relationship with my parents is cautious. They've learned to call without asking for money, though sometimes I can still hear the hesitation in their voices, like they're resisting old reflexes. We talk about books we're reading, neighborhood news, the Dallas Cowboys' latest game. It's not warm exactly, but it's no longer transactional. Chloe surprisingly has changed the most. After that night in the living room, she left Dallas for Austin and took a job as an event coordinator. She's still figuring herself out, but she's doing it without leaning on me or anyone else for rent or validation. We text a few times a month sometimes, about nothing important, sometimes about the heavy stuff. There's a tentative honesty between us now, one we never had as kids. The last time I saw her, we met for coffee in a little corner cafe. She handed me a small, carefully wrapped box. Inside was a ceramic mug, clumsy and imperfect, glazed in a deep blue with streaks of gold. I made it in a beginner's pottery class, she said. I thought you'd like it. I ran my fingers over the uneven rim and smiled. I do. We sat there for a long time. No performance, no roles, just two sisters drinking coffee while the afternoon light shifted on the table between us. Here's the truth. No one likes to admit sometimes you don't get the apology you want. Sometimes the people who hurt you will never see the full shape of the damage. But that doesn't mean you can't stop the bleeding yourself. I used to think strength meant endurance, that if I could just hold on long enough, they'd see me, appreciate me, maybe even love me the way I needed. Now I know strength is knowing when to put the rope down entirely. And maybe the most important thing I've learned, silence can be a prison, but it can also be a key. I was quiet for 4 years because I thought speaking up would make me the villain. But when I finally used my voice, I didn't just free myself. I gave the people around me a chance to see the truth, even if they didn't want to at first. Life feels smaller in some ways. Now fewer phone calls, fewer obligations, but it's also richer, fuller. And every morning when I drink coffee from that lopsided blue and gold mug, I remember that the best things in my life now aren't perfect. They're just mine. If you've ever had your hard work erased and your name replaced by someone else's, you know how deep that wound cuts. What would you have done if you were me? Stayed silent or burned the truth into the ground? Tell me in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.